Welcome to Your Passaggi Professor, a podcast for singers who want tools to bridge the gap between the hard skills we learn in music school and the soft skills we need to live focused, intentional lives. I'm your host, Sarah Neely, voice professor, director, and certified life coach. Each week, we'll talk about mindset, emotional regulation, boundaries, and more so you can navigate the passaggi of your life both on and off the stage. Welcome back, my singing friends. It's a beautiful day as I'm recording this. I just got back from a lovely morning walk with the Passaggi pups, and they're both here in my office lying on the floor as I record this episode. Oh, you're so cute. And I've got my homemade latte with protein milk, and I'm ready to go. So let's do it. Today we are continuing our conversation about relationships and emotional responsibility, and we're diving into a concept that has completely changed the way I see myself and the people around me. We are going to talk about a concept called emotional childhood versus emotional adulthood. And before you panic, this is not about shaming yourself. It's not about labeling yourself as immature. It's not about blaming your parents. It's about understanding a skill set most of us were never taught. So let's define these clearly. Emotional childhood is when we haven't developed the skills to process our emotions. It's when we believe that other people or circumstances are responsible for how we feel. It sounds like, they made me feel this way. If they would just change, I would be fine. This situation is why I'll never make it as a professional singer. I can't be calm until they calm down. It often includes victim mentality, blaming, emotional reactivity, like children do, right? Tantrums, rage fits, snapping, shutting down, pouting, buffering behaviors like overeating, scrolling, numbing out, all those things. And here's the important thing. This is incredibly normal. There is no class where we learn how to process emotions. Most of us are products of our environment, and if our parents or teachers were operating from emotional childhood, which many were, then that's what we learned. So this is not about shame, it's about awareness. Emotional adulthood is when we take full responsibility for our emotional life. That means my joy is my responsibility. My pain is my responsibility. My security is my responsibility. My reactions are my responsibility. It does not mean other people are never wrong. It does not mean tolerating mistreatment. It does not mean suppressing emotions. It means I am responsible for how I process them and how I behave. And that is incredibly empowering. But it's also a skill. You don't wake up in emotional adulthood. You practice your way into it. And when you learn this tool, it's another one that is very easy to turn against yourself. I talked about this before in one of the earlier podcast episodes that I made, but it's worth repeating. Because if I need a reminder about this, I know you probably do too. Because once you realize that you have all the power to take responsibility for your own life, it's easy to say, oh, so I'm the reason for all this drama. I've been doing this wrong. I'm such a terrible person. I can't believe I acted that way. That is emotional childhood turning on itself, right? When this situation arises, I encourage you to choose curiosity over judgment. If we were already perfect, we wouldn't need these tools. Growth requires compassion. We can't grow and learn without first noticing the things that we want to change and the things that we have the power to change. And this is often a bit uncomfortable. But learning to process the discomfort and grow through it is the ultimate superpower. So here's something else I want you to know about this work. Remember that emotional childhood often results in childlike behavior, like tantrums, yelling, pouting. Those behaviors often lead to regret, and they harm your relationships with others and with yourself. But even as we grow our emotional IQ, we're still human. We will still make mistakes and do things we aren't proud of. You will still mess up. You will still snap. You will raise your voice. You will shut down sometimes. Emotional adulthood does not mean perfection, but it does mean taking responsibility for your emotions, and that means taking responsibility for repairing when you've made a mistake. It means taking responsibility and apologizing. Let me give you a real life example. I was working on an opera production, directing, stage managing, wearing all the hats in a small university program. And we had gone back and forth in emails about keeping the recital hall clear during tech week. We had some miscommunication. I thought the hall was completely booked for the whole week. Turns out lots of other things got booked in there, and it was not ideal. It would mean that I had to tear down my set and move things after every rehearsal and then back before every rehearsal during tech week, which is stressful and not ideal. So based on several emails I had with the tech director, I thought we had gotten to an understanding about me not having to move my set. Then one day before tech week started, the hall manager approached me and was like, "Oh, hey, by the way, are you aware of all these times that you need to tear down and move your stuff?" And because I was already super overwhelmed, very stressed, completely at capacity, in that moment, I snapped. And it was not pretty. I was not very kind. And while I believe that my frustration with the situation was valid, and even my department chair stepped in and supported me, I still believe that my behavior in that moment, and the way I responded, wasn't aligned with who I want to be. So I apologized. Even though I felt justified in my emotions, I was not justified in my actions. So I took responsibility for that. So this is not about beating yourself up or denying your feelings. I'm not going to try to pretend that the situation was fine and make myself, or try to force myself not to feel upset at having to move my set multiple times during an already very stressful week. But I still believe in taking responsibility for my behavior and communicating in a way that is going to help the situation and ultimately help me, instead of creating a worse situation between me and the person that I have to work with to get this production done. And that also leads us into why this shows up so powerfully in relationships. To give another example, in romantic relationships, I've been on both sides, where I've been in a relationship with someone who tried to meet all my needs, and I was sort of the emotional child, right? And at first it felt wonderful. I was not having to do anything for myself. Anytime I had a problem, my partner would step in and try to help. But eventually I realized that I was losing confidence. I wasn't developing my own skills. I was being over cared for in a way that actually weakened me. And I've also been on the other side in a relationship where I was walking on eggshells trying to manage someone else's mood so that I could feel calm. That person was operating very much from emotional childhood all the time. And that is exhausting. And it's a survival mechanism for me in that situation. When the other person is dysregulated, it feels devastating to your own nervous system. But emotional adulthood teaches you that I can calm myself. I can regulate myself. I am not responsible for managing someone else's emotions. And sometimes, yes, emotional adulthood includes leaving a relationship that's not healthy, because responsibility includes protecting yourself. But I encourage you to always work on your side of the relationship, and more specifically, your relationship with yourself first, before you make any decisions about leaving a relationship. As Brooke Castillo always says, it only takes one person to change a relationship. And I think you'll find that when you apply these tools and you adjust what you can control on your end of things, you will see huge changes in your relationships and in your life. So now let's bring this into singing because, top of mind, singers receive feedback that can be brutal, and it can be hard to know how to emotionally handle and process those moments. You might get told that you don't have the right look, that you're too heavy, that you're not marketable, you're too dressy, you're too polished. Any number of things can be said to you. And I don't agree with any of those comments. But here's the difference. If you're in emotional childhood, if you hear something like that, you're going to say, well, I guess I'll never succeed, or there's no point in auditioning. The industry is just rigged against me. It's not fair, so why should I try? Emotional adulthood says, I disagree with that feedback, and I'm still responsible for my career. And that thought is going to be much more likely to help you continue to take action, to continue to audition, to continue refining your craft, to continue putting yourself out there so you can find the people that are your people, that will appreciate all that you are as an artist. Trust me, they exist. You just have to find your people. But you can't do that if you stop taking action. Because if you blame the world, you stop taking action. And when you stop taking action, you guarantee the outcome you fear. Taking responsibility doesn't mean agreeing with harmful feedback. It means refusing to let it define your behavior. So is this resonating with anyone? Can you see where maybe you've given away your power? So let's talk about some practical steps to help you overcome a tough situation and practice working your emotional adult responsibility muscle. So here are the questions I want you to ask yourself. Journal about it, literally write down your answers and work through it. Name the person or circumstance you believe is causing your negative feeling. Identify what you're feeling. Describe why you think this person or circumstance has the power to make you feel that way. Identify the actual thought you're thinking. Can you see that it's the thought, not the person, creating that feeling? And then the last step of this is asking yourself, how might you take responsibility for your feelings moving forward? These questions are so powerful, and there's real science-backed evidence for why this works. It's called your reticular activating system. I learned about it through Jim Quick. So your reticular activating system is part of your brain that works like an algorithm. It scans for evidence based on the question you ask. If you ask, why does this always happen to me? Your brain will find evidence that you're a victim, and it will keep finding evidence for that thing happening to you. But if you ask, how can I take responsibility here? Your brain will find agency. The question you ask yourself directs your brain to come up with answers for that question, which means you have more power than you think. So, in summary, emotional childhood is blaming. Emotional adulthood is owning. Emotional childhood reacts. Emotional adulthood responds. Emotional childhood demands others regulate us. Emotional adulthood means learning to self-regulate. And this is not about perfection, it's about practice, it's about repair, and it's about growth. This is the work that changes your relationships. This is the work that changes your career. This is the work that changes your singing. So if this episode resonated with you, if you're recognizing patterns in yourself that you want to shift, this is exactly the kind of work I help singers do. Because managing your emotions doesn't just change your life, it changes your voice. It changes your confidence. It changes how you walk into auditions and rehearsals and performances. And you don't have to figure this out alone. Coaching is where we take these concepts and apply them directly to your specific situations. If you're ready to move from emotional childhood into emotional adulthood in a grounded, compassionate way, reach out. The easiest way to do that is to sign up for my weekly newsletter and respond directly to my email. I'll put the link to subscribe in the show notes below. And next week, we're going even deeper. We're going to talk about lovability and worthiness and what unconditional love actually means. Because emotional adulthood requires a deep sense of worth that's not dependent on performance, casting, productivity, or someone else's approval. You're not going to want to miss that one. I'll see you there. Ciao! Thank you so much for listening to Your Passaggi Professor with Sarah Neely. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen. This really helps the podcast reach more singers just like you. And if you're ready to learn the life skills that smooth the passaggi of your life, you can follow me on Instagram at your_passaggi_professor. That's Passaggi with 2 S's and 2 G's. There's a link in my bio where you can subscribe to my weekly newsletter and learn more about working with me. See you next time.